Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Return to the Realm, a rereaders podcast for the Realm of the Elderlings series of books by Robin Hobb. I'm Kayiu, here with Alex and Leah, and today we're going to continue with Ship of Magic. This is our second episode on it. We're getting chapters 5 through 9. Um, and I honestly was going to go into this part of the book thinking, well, it's still the intro. We're not going to have much to talk about, but we were supposed to start recording like 10 minutes ago, but we got caught up in talking about the book and just like spiraled into a conversation. So I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be fine.
I have so many notes. I didn't realize because I like do it on my Kobo and I didn't realize how many times I'd highlighted things or like annotated stuff until I started typing them out and I was like, "Oh my God, like this is actually a lot."
I did not have very many notes, and like sometimes I felt bad. I was like, wait, I just finished the chapter and I only said like one thing. But I kind of got sucked into it, and I was like, I'll have things to talk about when on other people's notes, so it's fine.
Yeah, I think me and Alex are like a lot more like we pre-prepare our thoughts, and I feel like lots of times your insights come well from like just like extending or bouncing off what we talk about.
I'll have like 2 notes in the document, and Alex and Kaiyu's notes take up like a page and a half.
But we all end up talking, I think, about the same amount. Like it doesn't feel like it's uneven.
Right, I'm better off the cuff.
Also, lots of my notes are very ranty, and they don't come across well. If I try to translate them into talking, it would just be like word vomit.
I have so many feelings, and like when I'm angry about something in a book, I can't just like read past it. I have to like get my notes out and type them out because I hate all of them or I hate something and I need to get it out so that I can continue reading.
Yeah, I was like scrolling through the notes right before this, and I scrolled to the bottom, and like the last note is about Kyle and Kefria, and Alex just says, "They're both fucks."
They are the worst, and I hate them both. They're horrible parents.
Accurate. Yep.
That's one of the things where like Kefria, even though she's an asshole, you can kind of like understand where her asshole parts come from, and it's just like with Kyle, it's just like almost like cartoonishly evil, and I don't know which one is worse because it's like Kyle being cartoonishly evil makes it like, even though it's like something that does really happen, it feels like more disconnected, while Kefria feels like it hits a little bit closer to home, where it's like I can see the things, like the societal stuff that would like lead to someone being this kind of awful person.
I feel like the type of evil that like just stands there and watches stuff and is like, I don't like this, but I'm not doing anything about it because I'm just a little woman and I can't.
So passive, yeah. I think that at this stage in the book, where we are as far as we are right now, Kefria's worse than Kyle. And I am shocked that I'm saying that, but Kyle is the worst. But like at least he's open about his like being a shitty person and he just kind of owns it. Kefria, on the other hand, is like doing all of these things that everyone else is telling her to do and not thinking critically about anything or thinking for herself and being like, this is something that I actually think is wrong and feel strongly enough about that I'm going to stand up for it. And she lets Kyle hit her child. How could you, as a mother, let someone hit your baby? And
Ronica does too. Ronica's like, not in my house, but then ultimately she still gives the ship to him and she still lets Wintrow go with him. Like, Ronica's really the only person that Kyle somewhat listens to. And she lets it happen too. I'm like, I forgot that happened. And I was like, how do they, like, if I saw someone hit, like, someone in my family like that, I would never let them be around that person again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that Ronica still is too caught up in like appearances. So she's like, it would look so bad on the family if we just switched it all and did like a 180 and gave Althea the ship again.
Would it not look bad if your grandson went out with a black eye? Like, come on now.
Right.
And came home with slave tattoos.
Right.
Yeah, and I think
Ronica
like
is
there's definitely gonna be someone who's gonna be like, well, they're like it's written in like a pseudo medieval time where the standards are different, and I'm like, no, like from what we see of Bingtown, that is just not the case. Like
also
maybe
like
six duchies, but no.
I don't even think someone would get away with that in the Six Duchies. If someone was like beating their kid, Shrewd probably would have had them poisoned.
I'm
Like
sure he had in
stayed
the
after
past.
them.
Because
Yeah.
we hear about that one lord that Fitz has to take out who is like
Who was like abusing the
the young
daughter.
servants. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
So it definitely wouldn't stand with the barbarians.
Ronica is just such a real housewife of Bingtown. All she cares
Yes.
about
Yes.
is making sure that her like reputation and her family's appearances, like everybody has to think we're rich. It's like, okay.
And it's like, homegirl, everyone knows you're broke. Like,
Right, everyone knows you're broke and that your son-in-law is a piece of shit. Like nobody likes Kyle Haven. No
Yeah.
one. Except for Kefria.
and it's so funny for someone who's so caught up in appearances. She has no pulse on anything that's happening socially. Like if she just like taken a second to listen to the crew, like even Wintro, who's like set apart so much from the sailors, just by sleeping on the deck for one day, finds out, yeah, Althea is like the crew likes Althea and they don't like Kyle or respect him.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, she doesn't care really about the ship or like the ship's politics, and I think that's why she's like okay with just dealing with what would look better in Bingtown rather than what will go over better on Vivacia.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of like I was reading and Althea was talking about how like Kyle, how could they have given Kyle the ship because like he doesn't even know anything about it and he's not a Vestrit. And then she stopped herself and was like starting to think about her mom and she's like, well, does she care about Vivacia like that? And you start to wonder, like,
I
it
don't think
doesn't
she does.
seem like Ronica understands fully or like, yes, she understands kind of the customs and the tradition of it, but she doesn't care for Vivacia, it seems, as much, even though she came from an old trader family, did she not?
Mhm.
Even
Like
though
she understands the importance
her
of it,
mom-
but she doesn't like.
She resents Vivacia, I think. Like she understands, yeah,
Mhm.
she needs a family member on board. Like she knows what Vivacia needs, but for Althea, it's more about like making sure Vivacia is happy and like comfortable. And for Ronica, it's more about like, oh, just appease the ship so that she'll still sail for us.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You
that's kind
know?
of whack.
Yeah. But she's like, oh, my husband always cared more about the ship, so I'm jealous. I think Ronica's just jealous of the ship.
But
Kind
the
of
thing
no, yeah, like somewhat, but also it's like I don't even know how to put it. Yeah, no, sorry. Go ahead, Alex.
I wonder if because later on in the chapter, I think it's chapter 8 where Kefri is kind of thinking back on like her mom doing all of these things and like taking her out and trying to teach her how to like run the like orchards or farms or whatever that they have and like showing her how to do all this stuff. I wonder if she was kind of trying to train Kefria to take her place so that she could join Ephron on their ship and like do all of these things and travel together instead of being apart so long. But once Kefria said like, no, I'm actually not doing this, Ronica realized that it's something that she's gonna have to do just basically forever. So she was kind of fucked.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like it felt like both Ephron and Ronica were sort of like they were sort of like a power couple, but they were also like just it felt like neither of them just were willing to sit down and retire because they could have done it at some point, right? Because they they were rich, but they just kind of they just like kept investing and like trading instead of and they were like, yeah, someday we'll retire. And it just felt like they didn't have like an idea of what someday looked like.
I think it's also one of those things where they both liked their individual lives too much to give it up for the other person. Like, it's clear that Ephraim wanted to and loved being a sailor, and that's something that he wanted to do for the rest of his life. And I know that Ronica liked, like, I'm sure she enjoyed the social gathering and that kind of like chatty town aspect of her life. So she didn't want to give that up to like go on a ship and be like seasick or like in dirty areas with a bunch of sailors.
I mean, but she doesn't like all the financial parts of it. She doesn't like
Yeah.
the Maeve harvest. She doesn't like and like it sounds like she would have preferred to be on the ship and like do all the stuff with Ephraim, like in the sense of because all their dreams were like, yeah, I'll carry you off to the Pirate Isles or whatever.
I think she really just wanted to be with him. It wasn't about going on the ship and traveling together because I think that if she had her way, she would have just had him stay home.
Yeah, she
Right.
wants like a whole. That's their compromise. She's like, just stay home with me for a whole year. And then he's like, no, I want to take you with me. So it's kind of like a push and pull between the two of them.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess where I land is I feel like from the way it's described, even though they both have like their attachments to their lifestyle, I feel like Ephraim is the one who couldn't give it up more than Ronica.
Yeah, I think so.
I agree.
Because they could have hired someone to run all of the things that Ronica was doing. And like most of the financial, like making order of everything, she could have either passed that on to Kefria or she could have done that sort of from the ship and just sent letters back like, here's what you have to handle, or this is how you do this, and all that stuff.
Right. She could have sent birds back and forth.
Definitely.
Like Erica and, or is it Detozi and Eric or something? The bird romance people from Rain Wild.
Yeah.
I can't remember their names.
I have
Detozi
no
one
clue, but I
about-
know exactly what you're talking about.
I loved that. Like, was my favorite little subplot in all of Rain Wilds.
It was so cute.
It was so cute. Anyways, chapter 5.
Yeah, just a solid 15 minutes into the episode, we're getting into our first chapter. So,
Fine.
but yeah, I think that this is one of those like sections of the book where it does make sense to talk about it all as like one big thing. So that was
Right.
but yeah, chapter 5, Bingtown. In terms of specific stuff, not much happens here other than Vivacia docks at Bingtown, and we're sort of getting the prep for the next chapter, which is when uh, Ephraim gets to go on the Vivacia and die on it, and therefore animate Vivacia. But now here it's a lot of Althea coming home and realizing how bad her father is, um, Brashen thinking about his own future, etc., etc.
I like the first time I read it, I didn't really understand the significance of Althea having all these dreams about like her great grandmother Tally being on the ship and like how she ran things and whatnot. And now knowing that the dragons would pass on their memories through like their saliva when they help the serpents cocoon and whatever, it's interesting to think of like Vivacia's passing on the memories of Althea's ancestors to her, just like the dragons would do with their young.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a cool little like tie-in once you know that the ships are dragons.
Mm-hmm.
I got a different thing. I think that that's actually really true, and I love that. I didn't think of that before, but all I was thinking of was like, this is so unhealthy for Althea. Like, she's just living in the past and stuck in her memories. She's gonna turn into Rapskull if she doesn't be careful. And like,
Oh, like she could turn into Tally.
yeah,
Yeah.
I had a similar thing with it. Reminded me of what the Fool went through with Girl and the Dragon and Rapskull and all. Which I
yeah,
think if you were on top of your game, you could kind of start guessing what's going on with the live ships.
For sure, there's so many hints dropped in this section. It's actually ridiculous, especially with Wintro. Like, there was a quote from Wintro. I was like, "Oh my god! Like, this is actually wild."
Mm-hmm.
Some stuff is so obvious once you're rereading. Like, there's a part with the serpents where one of them's dreaming and says, like, she dreamt that the lack was the plenty and she was soaring within it. It's like, that's so obvious that it's a dragon flying in the sky. Like, so obvious once you know it. But if you don't know it, you're like, what does this mean? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. It's both like helpful for Althea, but also super damaging because I think.
Well, she like starves and just like basket cases herself the whole rest of the time doing that, you know?
And like importantly, she like loses any chance she could have had to establish herself as a potential like opposition to Kyle. Like she loses basically everything socially, and that lets Kyle like otherwise I think the crew would have probably stuck up for her more. And like actually maybe like straight up rejected Kyle.
And it makes Kyle think that he won because he's like, oh, now she's like meek and demure because she just needed someone to like beat her into submission.
Yeah, I hated his mansplaining to Kefria for fucking 8 pages. It was too long.
It was like, it made me feel gross.
And Kefria's like, wow, I'm so glad I have a husband who can think for me. And I'm like, I'm going to gouge out my ears.
That makes sense. I hated that.
Yeah. It was, ugh.
Last episode, it was all like, fuck Kenneth and I hate Kenneth. This episode, it's I want to murder Kyle. I hate him so fucking much. He makes me so angry already. And it's like, we're only 5 chapters in and I hate his guts. I hate his guts.
I think he has like the best revenge arc though.
Yeah, I think so.
Really? I guess, kind of.
I mean, he like has to live in a cave by himself on an island, like chained up for forever, and then he gets rescued just to die immediately.
Fair. I just
amazing.
they see. My thing is, bad things happen to him, but I want like. I want my children to get their revenge. I want like Winter to get a nice kick in the ribs.
Yeah,
like Althea to get one slap back.
Doesn't Wintro just like feel sorry for him?
Yeah,
of course he does. He's Wintro.
I know. Like Wintro would have any
other reaction.
But yeah, no, I agree. It's like it's satisfying in like the abstract, but also like
compared to like the Satrap or Kenneth's endings, I feel like his ending is like the best out of this series for bad guys.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the most.
I think like outside of like Malta and Rain, I feel like this series is really all about bittersweet endings. So seeing Kyle get messed up is definitely like it's up there. It's one of the better character endings. Yeah.
Agreed. Yep. I think the best like ending for a bad guy in this entire series is Hest in Rain Wilds.
No doubt about it.
I love when Hest gets eaten by
it's the blue one, right? The dark.
Yeah. His name
Talor?
Kalo, maybe? Is it Kalo?
Yeah, it's like Kalo, yeah.
Kalo, yeah. And he calls him, he's like, I shall name you Blue Glory. And then Kalo's like, I shall name you Meat.
I love that.
It's amazing.
And at first I was worried that I wasn't going to vibe with it in the same way that I was kind of not feeling it for like Kyle's death. But I feel like the way that everyone's like, Kyle's missing, or Hest's missing. Oh well. It's just so satisfying. They're just like,
no one really cares.
Yeah.
The only one who cares is like Elise for a moment. He's like, oh my god, he's running wild in our city, and then everyone's like, don't worry, if we see him, we'll shoot him on sight. Like,
yeah.
It's just like I need to get that. I don't have that book, or I didn't when I read it. I listened to the audiobook. I think I have it now because I'm pretty sure I got it for Christmas. But I would have like read that part over and over, just because it's so funny.
Yeah.
I feel like with Hest, like there's such like a systemic breakdown of his character. Like first with the Chalcedian person who like shows him fear, and then you have the whole thing with like Cedric's speech and like Elise when he finally arrives in Kelsingra, and then he like tries to make a move on like Davy or like who is it like
Well, like one of the like dragon sidekicks. I can't remember what they're called right now.
Yeah, it's like Carson's
like
nephew.
a young one. Yeah, like he's too young for Hest.
I mean, everyone is too much person for Hest. But yeah,
that's true.
But yeah, and Hest like thinks he's like totally got this, and meanwhile this kid is like this guy's fucking weird.
Yeah, like you are a creep.
Mm-hmm. And then right after that, he just ambles into Kalo. It's just
it's amazing.
Yeah, so, what's cool with him is it's like he experiences indirectly all of like the bad things he's done to other people, but we're shown that like he hasn't grown, he's never going to grow, and the only way that he's going to get any sort of, or the people he's hurt are going to get any sort of closure is with no closure. He's just gone.
If he gets eaten.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, he has like no sense of awareness. He's like, all these bad things are happening to me and I don't deserve it. And it's like, you did literally all of these things to other people. So, yes, you do. Now get eaten, please.
Did we mention that this was spoilers all?
It's in every title, and I feel like if someone started with a second episode of this book, it's their fault.
Okay.
But also it is kind of my fault because I forgot to do the usual spoilers all thing at the start. But
I just forgot, and I'm like, we're over here talking
spoilers
about
all.
Should we let someone know? It's too late now, but turn back while you still can.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, that's not that bad of a spoiler. I think knowing that there are consequences for a character who's an asshole, pretty fine.
Yeah, agreed.
Oh yeah, so circling back around to we were talking about how Althea immersing herself in the memories was kind of a bad thing. There's a line where she's saying there's more to life on a ship than the relationship between a captain and the ship. And it's like, cool, so now take away from that you should talk to the crew if you want to be the captain. And she tricks herself into thinking that she's learning all of this stuff, but because she doesn't like take it into herself to apply it, it's just useless.
It doesn't sink in with her. She knows it, but she doesn't understand it, I think.
That's a really good way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Or she knows it, but she's still thinking about it in terms of her father being the captain. She's not thinking about how she needs to apply that to herself.
Well, especially in this chapter, because she doesn't realize that Ephraim is dying. Like, in her mind, he was on the mend, and he's getting better, and he's going to come and take over. So she just gets to tattle to him, like, what happened, and all of these horrible things that Kyle did to her, and all that stuff. It's not, I need to start gathering people around me because I'm going to be the captain the next voyage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't really think about how she still thinks that she's just going to be able to go home and tattle and everything will be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think this episode is when I start feeling more strongly towards Althea and Wintro. Like, they're less annoying this time in these chapters. I think that, like, I like them better now. And I'm on their side now.
Althea annoyed me more in this section than she did in the last one.
Really?
Yeah, because she's, like, mean to Brashen.
Okay, that I understand, but I, like, felt her anger, and I was, like, so pissed for her. But I think there was another thing. Like, I think she's just got it. She's just down bad right now. So that's why she's mean to Brashen.
That's true. Like,
And
the fact that
betrayal. That's what really got me. Like the punch in the gut betrayal of Ronica and Kefria and Ephraim. Like she doesn't understand what he's saying to her when he's like, Kefria and her children are different. Like they're not like you. I had to take care of them. I had to provide them. Like I had to. And she was like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like you did so much for all of us. But she doesn't understand that that's his way of like warning her. Like I had to do this. They screwed me over and convinced me that this is what I had to do.
And when he's like let go and she like he's probably just like addled and doesn't understand what he's saying. But it's like the worst thing he could have said in that moment.
Well, he probably is just worried that they're gonna take it away from him and he's gonna die on the ship without like holding it.
Right.
Like somebody needs to let go and he cannot be the one to do it.
They also just spring everything on Althea at once. Like, Ronica has no tact. She just walks up and is like, your father's dying. Immediately. And then Althea kind of like holds herself together enough to get him down to the ship and get everything in order and blah, blah, blah. And then at the very last second, they're like, Kefria, go take the peg from her. And Althea's like, what the fuck? Like, not only is my father dying, but now, like, the fact that they don't tell her anything until the last second is, like, severely fucked up.
It is the worst. And that's why I said fuck Ronica, too. Like, fuck her. Yeah. Fuck her, Kyle, and Kefria. They can all... No, I hate them all right now.
I agree.
Ronica gets a little bit better, but honestly, she stays kind of the same for a while.
She stays the same for a long time.
Yeah, I think that what's really interesting is that both her and Althea are like super similar in their flaws, and that they take a long time to change, and they're really bad at like they're super self-centered. They're like, I have problems, and those are the only problems in the world.
Yeah. I was thinking. Oh, go ahead.
There's this line that Brashen says, which I think like just encapsulates everything we've been talking about, where it's like typical Althea. She had no concept that any person beside herself truly existed. He wondered if she had ever stopped to think at all what her father's death meant to him or any of the crew. And it's super true of Althea, but you can also apply it to Ronica. Oh.
I think you can apply it to most of the female Vestrites. I think that they're all like that. And I was thinking about it. I was like, because when we get this section from Kefria's point of view, I'm just going to skip ahead because we're talking about this all as one thing. So when in chapter 8, when we get Kefria's point of view, she says something. Okay, she says that she recalled was the same year that she resolved she would never marry a man who would go to sea and leave her with such burdens. She would find a man willing to fulfill a man's role, take care of her and keep her safe, and defend their door from all troubles and worries. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, Kefria is literally what Malta would have become if Malta hadn't gone through everything she went through in these books. And I feel like Ronica, like, is the reason that her daughters are like that. Like, because of the way that Ronica cares so much about perception and, like, everybody else's view of them. That's kind of the biggest thing that she impressed upon her kids. And so, like, Kefria is very, like, she's only, like, surface level. She's not very deep. She's kind of vapid and, like, and then Malta's just as bad until she's not.
And it's super interesting because Malta, like, hates her mother and is, like, Kyle stan for life. Yeah. Despite being so similar to her own mom.
Yeah.
Well, and, like, Malta is basically the same as them. She just has like the child inability to like hide it in any way. Like she's boisterous about it because she's a kid.
Yeah.
And it's like where Ronica cares too much about consequences, Malta cares not enough.
Yep.
There was something else that made me really sad, like, and it's about Ronica too, when she tells Althea that Ephraim's dying. Althea goes to like hug her, and Ronica like waves her away and is like, no thanks. And it's kind of like it
That's
like
so
hurt my
creepy.
heart for Althea, because the thing is, when you go, I think that because they're sharing this loss, and when you go through that kind of big loss with someone, like going to hug her mom isn't something that she's doing just to comfort her mother. Like Althea needed that comfort and that like reassurance too, and Ronica kind of denied both of them of that. And it's kind of rude and fucked up.
And that makes me really glad that we got the Ronica chapter before, because we get like the context for why she's doing it. She's like, I need to be strong. I can't let this grief get to me.
Yeah.
And so
But
like, yeah.
it's not right. It's
Oh
not
yeah,
what
no, for
she
sure. But like, I think that like it makes it like
understand.
you can understand it based on that, instead of just being like, what the fuck? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
fuck you,
But
but also I get it.
it
Yeah.
still hurts to see like Ronica kind of turning her daughters away. Like those are your babies, and if they need a hug, just let them hug you, and you're not going to seem weak because you accepted a hug from your daughter. But you know that if Althea did hug Ronica, she probably would have broken down then, and that's the reason that she like waved her away.
Mhm.
But it still sucks.
Yeah. And honestly, all I can think of when like Veronica's trying to be strong is like, well, okay, if you're gonna be strong, use that strength for something good, like actually overriding Kyle.
I know.
I don't think I have like anything else for the next 2 chapters.
Yeah, I don't have anything else for this chapter. There's just like there's just a point where like Althea's crying and she like goes into Vivacia, and I'm like, this is also concerning, but we kind of already went in depth into the parallels there, so yeah.
Oh, there was something that I caught that I was like wondering about, and it's about Wintro. And I think it's Ronica again. And Wintro's like, as he stepped forward to embrace her and draw off some of her grief, she stepped back. Like, what do you guys think that is? It's got to be something of the skill, being able to like just touch someone and kind of take away some of their pain. That's like mild, little bit of maybe temporary forging almost.
For sure.
Yeah. It might be some type of skill thing. I wonder if like, I mean, they don't call it the skill, and they don't like grow and try to enhance that magic the way they do in the Six Duchies. So maybe the priests just use it in more of like a meditative way and use it to try to help people in that regard. Because doesn't he kind of do something similar when he finds those slaves? Like that priest
so.
slave or something?
Yeah, he does it like later on. I actually completely missed this here because I was just like, I just read draw off some of her grief as like, I'm gonna hug her and she's gonna be less sad. But then it totally
Yeah.
makes sense that like the wording is like super like clear that he's gonna like do something magical.
Well, he also does it to Althea when she's like sobbing over Ephraim's body, and she thinks that at first she thinks that first it's kind of, it like feels like Ephraim, but she like tells herself that it's Brashen, but it's actually Wintro. And I think that's kind of also a mini sign that Wintro is kind of the true one for Vivacia.
Yeah.
There are a couple things in this section that made me be like, yeah, that's a little sign that Wintro's the one that should be with her.
Yeah, it's oh, what was I gonna say? Never mind, I completely forgot. Oh no, wait, I didn't. No, wait, I remembered. So the thing is, like, it seems like lots of the priests of Sa have some capacity for whatever this magic is, but it's not like explicitly like skilled individuals are sent. It's just like random people. So I wonder, like, if that shows that, like, in the right environment, you can cultivate the natural, like, skill proclivity that, like, all people have, which is that you can, like, sense them with the skill and, like, blossom that into, like, a more talent, I guess.
Wintro says that, like,
They
a
send kids
lot of
back.
people are sent back. Yeah.
They do refuse people, so I wonder if there's kind of like a test of the skill or whatever ability that they use
Right.
that's kind of near the beginning before they kind of fully accept someone into the priesthood or like as a novice or whatever. And if they don't pass that test, they send them back home.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. Because when I read that, I just assumed that, like, it meant that, like, they just, like, were really fidgety and they didn't jive with the priest lifestyle. But that also makes sense that, like,
It could be
it
both or either
yeah,
or. Yeah.
yeah, that, like, because the lifestyle leads to a development of the skill, or, like, they need to have, like, both the ability to, like, actually have the lifestyle and skill sensitivity. I wish they showed us more. Like, there's so many, like, little, like, hooks or, like, parts of the world, and it's like, well, we'll give you, like, one chapter of it as a treat, and you'll never see it again.
I know,
Right.
I want more. I think that that's all I had for the first chapter.
Cool.
Oh, actually, there
Okay.
was one more thing. There was one more thing.
Okay. Okay.
And it was at the very beginning, and we were talking about this a little bit when things are like kind of reversing and like it's getting less, like women have less authority and stuff. I was thinking like the time when Bingtown was good and was equal and like had women had just as many rights as men did, I bet that had to have been the time before like the Pale Woman and before Clarice really like had a strong hold on the world, or like as strong of a hold as they do now. It was like pre-Dark Ages, and now that we're in Dark Ages of like Six Duchies, it's also moving the whole world into a darker age and darker time.
Hmm. Which we see,
Because
like,
we are
slavery is, like, the big part of that, which is why Amber wants to stop slavery.
yeah.
Interesting parallels to real life these days.
Yeah. Fucking whack.
Yeah.
Did not. Where is Fitz and the Fool? Like, we need them now.
I know.
Wait.
Our wheel of time is trying to go backwards. Help us, Catalyst.
I think that's all.
Okay. So, next up, we have Chapter 6, The Quickening of the Vivacia, which we've already definitely got into talking about some of the stuff here, but essentially, Ephron dies, Althea doesn't get to inherit the ship because Ronica's an asshole, everyone's mad, except Vivacia, who's having a jolly good time being alive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think. Oh, I was gonna say this last chapter as well, but, like, I don't think I appreciated Brashen as much as I should have when I first read this book. I was like, I was just like, he's a character, but now on a reread, just seeing, like, how much of, like just being, like, seeing how much of a rock he is for Althea, and how Ephron is basically like, you're part of the family, you should, like, come here too, and it's like, Brashen's just great.
Yeah. I am always Team Brashen. I love him and think he's like actually a really great guy.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he's like nice and like kind to Paragon and like asks Paragon if he can come aboard and realizes that Paragon like wants more interaction but is like super tired. So he's like, I'll tell you all about my adventures after my sleep. Like, he's so freaking sweet and I love him.
And he has no ulterior motives either. Like, he's going out of his way to do things to care for other people, and he knows he's not going to get anything. Like, Ephron's dead, but he's still like, oh, I need to make sure that, like, Althea gets home safe, even though I know that I'm going to be exhausted, I'm going to have to spend a bunch of money, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
You know, like, and at this point, he doesn't, like, it's pretty clear that he doesn't anything. No, and I don't think he has feelings for Althea yet either. Because there's one point where he thinks about her and, like, I don't remember what it is, but he thinks about her in a certain way that showed me, because I couldn't remember if he, like, always kind of had a thing for her or if it grows as the story goes on, but there was something he says about her in this part where I was like, oh, he does not yet. Like, that comes later.
I think that there's a little hint of something that, like, could spark him to start liking her. And it's when Althea is talking about when she, or if she was to become captain of Vivacia, they would only have people that both of them like be part of the crew. And he's like, well, I would want to be first mate or whatever. And she's like, of course. And he's like thinking to himself, he's like, I didn't even know that, like, Althea even liked me at all. And I think that's so cute.
That's the part that I thought of, because then he was like, part of him liked the idea that she liked him. And then I was like, he doesn't know yet that he likes her or will like her. Yeah.
I know, it's so cute.
Yeah. Right now he's like, this girl is like a goddamn mess.
Yeah. This girl is a mess with all capital letters.
And I just lost my best job. I need some stability right now, but like, yeah. And I feel like they really like, because the series is all about growth, and I love how like they grow into being better people for themselves, but also for each other.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting how, compared to all of the characters, Brashen kind of, I feel like almost every other character starts with some problem and then like grows out of it. But like Brashen, it's like he starts out fine, grows into a problem, and has to figure out how to get his life back on track. So it's like a kind of different arc from how everyone else experiences it.
I think
he's anyways, that's my last bit of positivity for this chapter. Wanted to get it out of the way real quick.
Rough. Well, okay, speaking of Brashen, there was one thing that I forgot about in the last thing. I think it's the very last line of the last chapter. And Brashen's like, a lot of older hands had no home save the Vivacia. Brashen was one of them. And I was like, my heart just shattered. It's fine. I'm not crying already. I felt so sad. Like, imagine all of those people who Ephron kept on for their wisdom, even if they couldn't continue to work and put as much effort into Vivacia as they had before, and he kept them employed and gave them a home, and now Kyle's gonna kick them all to the curb. Like, they're all screwed.
Yeah, and they don't get, like, if Brashen didn't get tags, no one got their, like, tags.
No.
So like,
and it's not like they could even, like, they probably wouldn't be able to find work on another ship even if they had tags, because they're old. Like, they probably can't do all of the stuff that, like, I think that living and working on a ship is very physically demanding, and a lot of older people I don't think would be able to do that.
Well, also, to be fair, though, I think that, like, I feel like the age band that's defined as, like, old is like different here probably than like what we think of as old, just because of like differences in life expectancy, but like still probably true.
Yeah. Also, like, working on a ship is really rigorous, so the second you don't have like the full physical abilities of like a 20 or 30-year-old, you're probably considered like old. You know?
Yeah, if you're not the captain and you're getting older, you're screwed.
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
Speaking of age, I did some math, and I think that Kenneth is around 40 years old. Because Paragon was saying that he was beached for 30 years. And I think Kenneth was only like 10 or 12 when everything was going on. So he's got to be around 40 at the beginning. So like right now he's about 40.
Which is interesting to think about because he takes all this effort to like present himself as a young man when like he's sort of going over the hill by like the standards of that.
Closer to middle age than a young man, I think.
Yeah. I like how most of our notes for chapter 6 is something along the lines of fuck Ronica.
Yeah. Because she's the fucking worst.
Like every one of us says something about it in our notes for this chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hated her.
Yeah, she's not great at this part.
The line where it's like, give her the peg, Kyle. She'll do it because she loves the Vivacia. Later, Althea would recall her mother's words, and they would rouse hate in her to a white-hot heat. Her mother had known all she felt, and still she had taken her ship from her.
Yeah, that's really fucked up.
She even like manipulates her into helping them. Like, oh, you love Vivacia, so go do this thing that will help us take her away from you.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I feel like there's lots of like I guess like parallels or analogs to how like Vivacia, like the relationship between Althea and Vivacia is sort of like that of like parent and child. But I think that I feel like Ronica, Althea, later like even Kyle, there's this whole thing of like they're sort of acting like parents in the way that like they think that they know what's best for Vivacia, but like none of them really fully takes the time to try and talk to her and like understand what's best for her. And it's like it's crazy because all of them like understand that she is like part of like Ronica and Althea both understand that she's a sentient being, but like they're both selfish.
Trying to make decisions. Well, they're trying to make decisions for her instead of considering like this is going to be a living creature.
Which is what makes it so easy for Kenneth to later
take her,
manipulate her, because it's like,
right,
I'm gonna let you do what you want.
And why it makes it like it gives the opportunity for Bolt to take over.
Yeah, I hate those sections. I was thinking about that. I'm not looking forward to that.
Interesting how different Bolt is from Vivacia.
Wait, maybe I'm stupid. Who's Bolt?
Bolt is
her dragon.
Yeah, her dragon self.
Oh, okay.
And she at one point takes over, and Bolt is like a bitch.
Bolt is scary. Like she will
Bolt's like,
shit if she wants to.
Bolt's actually scary, yeah.
Okay. I remember that she had like a dragon form. I forgot the name.
So Bolt has to be the one that like comes out at the end of everything.
I thought it was Paragon that turns into dragons.
I thought they all do.
Or do they all?
They're going to do it for all of them, or like if the live ship chooses not to. But I think that only one live ship chose not to.
Maybe it was Vivacia because she knew that Bolt was a bitch
or something.
I think they all like remember their dragon selves, but I think they keep their live ship personalities, right? So I don't remember what happens, but I thought that like Vivacia like gets Bolt under control or something.
She does in this trilogy.
Maybe Vivacia then becomes her own dragon. Like it's not like Bolt and her are fighting for dominance. They kind of like either they become one and they're like in harmony, or Vivacia wins.
And or maybe they split off into two different dragons. Maybe it's like Vivacia dragon and a Bolt dragon.
But wouldn't they have mentioned that? Like I think the only reason that
Paragon's the only one. Two different pieces of, or two different cocoons or whatever. I wonder if the boat with the legs turns back into a dragon.
Yeah.
Tarman.
What's his name again?
Tarman.
Yeah, I loved that boat.
Me too. But he didn't really talk or he didn't have a mouth.
He didn't have a face. He had
But
no
I guess he
figurehead.
could.
He would communicate with Leftrin sometimes, but he was just
when he wanted to.
Yeah, sorry, we were talking about Tarman?
Yeah, I was just saying I don't think Tarman wants to have a figurehead because when Leftrin finds that piece of wizard wood, he asks Tarman what he wants, and Tarman's just like legs and a tail. He doesn't want a figurehead.
Mm-hmm.
Does he get eyes too, or
I think the eyes are painted on originally. He's always had the eyes painted on.
Oh, okay. So the eyes are painted on, but when he gets the wizard wood, he gets
he adds the legs and the tail.
Okay.
Yeah. So why is that extra log part of Tarman's original stuff? No. Then why isn't he kind of at odds like Paragon was?
Probably because Tarman was already Tarman had been a live ship for so long and started out as one live ship, and then they're adding pieces. So he's
already fully realized it's just kind of a weak thing that he pushes away. He's like, see ya.
That was my interpretation. But also, if he was at odds, we wouldn't know because he can't.
He doesn't share much with us.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's kind of mysterious. Whereas Paragon is very vocal about all of his inner turmoil.
Yeah. I love him. He's very open. It's so sweet because he doesn't have anyone else to talk to, so he has to talk whenever he's given a chance.
He has all his cards on the table.
It's cute though, and he's like a little kid still.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's also at odds because not only does he have those 2 dragons in him, he also has a shit ton of little boy Kenneth that he's absorbed.
Yeah.
So.
And it's a lot of energy. He still has a few generation of Ludlucks too.
Yeah.
Right. He's got a lot of personalities going on in there.
Poor guy. I think there's maybe one thing left in this chapter for me.
Go for it. I don't have anything till chapter 7.
It's just Althea saying, she did then what she would regret for the rest of her life. Ever after she would wish she had been there to bid him a final farewell. And this is talking about being there at her father's funeral. And I just think that Hobb does such an amazing job making these characters feel so real, because this is something that easily happens a lot in real life where people make a decision in the heat of the moment because they're angry about something, and then something happens and they have to live with that regret forever. And I think that this happens a lot when it comes to dealing with death and family and stuff like that, where you might choose not to go to the funeral and say your goodbyes because something else is going on with the family, but then you realize, oh shit, that was the last time I'm getting to interact in some way with this person, so I feel like I ruined it. And I love that she includes that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. When I first read it, I was just like, oh no, she's not there for Vivacia, so if she would have gone there, maybe she could have had the ship. But it definitely makes more sense in the context of she didn't get to say one good final goodbye to her father.
And it's a ritual that she knows will one day happen to her, so it's something that she should have been there for her father.
Right, it's important in their customs.
Yeah.
Her father is basically the only one who's in her corner.
Yeah. Until the last second.
Yeah. But that was because fucking Ronica.
Right.
I'm sure she, like, because they're married, it's one of those things where you sometimes have to stand with your partner as a unit, even though it's against what you want.
I still think that, like, he was just delirious when he said "let go." I don't even think that, like, he like was
Well,
like
and do we
conscious.
know who he was talking to? Like, he could have been talking to Kefria. He just said let go. He didn't look at anyone, right?
Yeah,
So
like I just think
it
it's
is
just so out of left field for like I just don't think Efren would betray Althea.
No, I don't think he would intend to betray Althea, but I think he's like, I think Ronica wears him down and uses his like ailing mind and body to manipulate him into helping her betray Althea.
Hmm.
And she comes at him with like facts and stuff saying like, oh, Althea can take care of herself, but Kefria is so helpless and she can't do anything by herself, so she needs this. But
Also,
why
I wonder who raised Althea and who raised Kefria.
right.
Wonder how that happened.
and
Also,
why wouldn't Althea take care of her family? Like, you know that that's something that she would do. Ronica should know that's something that she would do.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Efren doesn't know that Kyle is going to immediately displace everybody. If Efren knew that,
He would suspect it. He's like Kyle is a snake. He knows.
yeah.
I don't think he knew how bad
I
Kyle
don't
was,
think
though.
he-
I don't think he thought that Kyle would kick Althea off the ship. Like,
And
she would have
Brashen.
still been a part of it.
That's
And
fair.
yeah, I think if given more time and if he still had to choose Kyle, he would have given Kyle some like stipulations and been like, you have to keep everyone that I had aboard and like wait for them to either want to find a new job or die off or something like that. Like,
Or
he would
he
have
would
taken care of his people more, his crew, if he had the ability. If Kyle didn't take so long for the ship and like for their first sail or whatever, it things would have happened very differently, I think.
Do you wonder if Kyle dragged his feet intentionally because he knew that Efren was really sick?
I think there's got to be some part of him that did that.
I agree. It didn't occur to
I
me
don't
until
know.
right now, but it makes sense to me.
I thought about it the
Maybe.
second we started reading this. I'm like, he's such a fuck.
Yeah.
I feel like he is. I feel like though if he'd done that, we would like find out at some point. Kyle is not a subtle person.
That's true.
I don't.
That-
It's not like
Like
it's something
especially in like the Kefria section, I feel like he would have been like, I'm sorry I took so long to come back to you, but I had to be sure about blah blah blah. Like like he would have said something about it.
something that he like worried that much about because he knew that he was getting the ship anyways. So he's like, might as well drag out my time and like enjoy this first ride and get everything that I can to look like the big shot.
Mhm.
Right.
And then he got lucky that Efren was so close to death at that point.
Mhm.
Fuck Kyle, I hate him.
He's gross. I think what's bad about him too, like Kenneth in his internal monologue never pretends to be anything other than a terrible person. But Kyle like seems to genuinely think that he's like a good guy, which is what
Like,
makes
they
it
made
really
me do
annoying.
this.
Yeah, he's like,
Althea
I'm doing
made
what I
me
need
hit
to do for
her.
my family, and women are beneath me, and I'm the smartest person ever.
Mhm.
Ugh, the thing that they
He's
make
like
me
the
want
archetype of
to
everything patriarchal in a
Yes.
patriarchal derogatory.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The thing that made me hate him so much was how like proud he felt and how he was like, yeah, Althea just needed a like stiff hand and she needed to be led with like some guidance and some strictness, and
Yeah.
he misunderstands her so much. And I want to just like I want to fucking fight him so bad.
And that's probably why he punches Wintrow. Because he's like, oh, last time I was violent towards somebody, they like submitted.
Submitted.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love though at the end of chapter 8 when Kyle like swings up on Brashen. Brashen's like, "Oh yeah, I could take him." But at the first,
and doesn't Brashen like step back and Kyle like falls?
Yeah, and then at that moment, Brashen's like, "Oh, he doesn't really know how to fight, so I could definitely kick his ass." Like that.
Yeah, out of respect for the Vestrits, I will not beat his ass.
Yeah,
but Lord knows I could.
yeah.
I love Brashen.
God, I have so many so much praise to heap on Brashen next chapter.
I love Brashen.
I noticed about Brashen is him and Althea both like handle Kyle in very different ways. Like Althea kind of stands up to him all the time and like is constantly pushing back, and Brashen is like respectful and does what he's told and like plays by the rules. But Kyle treats both of them like shit equally, even though they're taking a different approach. So it just shows that like no matter what either of them did, it wouldn't be good enough for him. Like he's gonna
It's not even like good enough. He's just paranoid that like
either of them could take.
They're gonna take over.
Yeah.
Well, because everybody likes them better than him.
Yeah.
And realizes that they're both much more competent than he is.
Yeah, it's like that manager that micromanages everybody and then is like paranoid that everyone hates them. And it's like, yeah, we all hate you because you're shit.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously.
Yeah, he's the worst.
Okay. Yeah. Chapter 7. Loyalties. I think that this chapter, Wintro meets Vivacia, Althea gets drunk. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, also, this is when I had my like big revelation, because I was trying to think about like, because I felt like last episode y'all were going in on Wintro and Althea, and I'm like, come on. And I think that the reason that like I feel more like sympathy towards Wintro and Althea / I don't get as annoyed by them is because they're young, I can excuse their like stupid stuff as like, okay, these are like faults of age. They will grow out of it. But like everyone else, all the other shitty people are shitty for life. They've grown into habits and patterns which they cannot lose.
Yeah. That's fair. I like them both. Wintro irritates me with his like holier than thou thing. Mm-hmm. And like he doesn't get better for a very long time.
No, even in chapter 6,
like the last book that he starts like getting slightly better for me.
Yeah. Well, okay. I have more sympathy for him now, and I'm like, okay, like it's gonna be bad for you, boy.
Yeah.
But he said to Althea, if we endure what he sends us cheerfully, it never fails that he will reward us. And talking about Saw, I'm like, boy,
it does not follow.
Take that advice. Take that advice, because shit's coming to you.
Yep, and he just fights against it so hard. Mm-hmm. Also, like one thing that bugs me about him is, and I'm sure he gets this from Kyle, but him and Kyle are both very like disrespectful and unwilling to like appreciate or adapt to the cultures of Bingtown. And like they just handle it in different ways. Like Kyle's really aggressive and just like thinks that he's right, and Wintro also thinks that he's right. He's just not aggressive about it. He's just like judgmental. He'll stand there and he'll be like, this ceremony is gross. My grandfather just died. Or like, Vivacia is an abomination. And he just thinks it in his head. He doesn't like punch people about it, where Kyle would punch somebody about it.
Well, I think he gets that from Kyle. I think he gets that from the priests and just not living in Bingtown. Because I think if he was raised with Malta, it would have been different.
Yeah, like he's not familiar with the customs because of that, but I think the attitude about it is like the response to it.
Yeah, and I think that the priests we see are like at least what is his name? Benadryl? I don't remember his name. Like
Yeah, something like that.
yeah. He like
Bernadol? Is that what his name is? Bernadol?
Yeah.
close enough.
Benadryl.
I like Benadryl though.
You're
Right
like
when I took a drink.
when Wintrow is like, I'm gonna have to be on ships with those savages. He's like, okay, reconsider.
Right, maybe be nice.
Yeah, I think that like Wintrow is sheltered and young, and that makes him bigoted and stupid in some ways. But I think that again, both him and Althea, I think, despite their flaws, they're always like you can see in their point of views that like they're trying to self-reflect and grow. Kind of the problem is that they self-reflect but not. They fall into the trap of they self-reflect but not on the areas that they need to be thinking about. Like there's some things that they just do unthinkingly, and they don't like make the effort to think about those parts of their lives until much later on. But
and Wintrow has a little bit of Fitz syndrome where he'll like think about something to death and then like wallow in it instead of doing something.
Yeah.
Perfect catalyst material.
Right, exactly.
That's why Amber wants
go emo boy, do nothing.
Right.
I think all of my notes.
It's so funny how like both catalysts are just like people who are passive to the extreme and don't do shit and just stumble into causing like world-changing events.
Yes.
I think that like Amber and like the Fool are the reason that they do all that. Okay, like, well, Amber would have pushed Wintrow if they were together, but I feel like the Fool's got to be the one making Fitz actually take action sometimes.
Sometimes they try to, and Fitz doesn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes Fitz just like impulsively does something or does something out of habit, and it's like, oh, rippled.
Or
I definitely think it's interesting that like Fitz is called the catalyst and not because the Fool is the catalyst for lots of stuff happening.
Right.
So I wonder if white prophets naturally are somewhat like their own catalysts. Because you kind of have to have these dreams, and then you have to go out. Like, they're the ones who are shaping it.
I think
so they're the ones who are really enacting the actual change by, like, finding their catalyst. And, like, the things that the Fool does, like the warnings that the Fool gives to Fitz and other people that keep Fitz alive, are the reason that Fitz can become and like have these catalytic actions.
I feel
like
like
there's some sort of like a reciprocal relationship. Like I know Fitz talks about it a little bit in Tawny Man.
Mm-hmm.
Or like he's like speculating.
The Fool tries to warn Fitz about stuff, Fitz does not listen. Like I think the same thing would happen a lot of the times whether the Fool said something or not. Because
Fool, like in one of the books, the Fool like warns Burrich or someone and tells them not to let Fitz go hunting, but like Fitz does it anyways, and then he like almost gets mauled by a boar or something like that. And Burrich remembers, he's like, yeah, that's the time that this happened, and like the Fool said not to do that or something like that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Ironically, the only time it actually mattered is when the Fool didn't just say something, but gave Fitz like the antidote, like the sea purge.
Oh, for the poison, right?
Yeah.
That
just
time
like
he really did save him.
I feel like fuck it. I don't have the energy to be cryptic here. Take this. You're gonna get poisoned. Thank me later.
And Fitz is still like, I'll eat all the herbs in the garden.
Yum 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 in my tum.
You girls giving me this? Okay, I'll have some.
Right. This girl I just met.
After the Fool warned me not to eat literally anything I didn't make myself, it's fine. It's growing in the dirt. I made it myself.
I feel like he even, like, maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like he even thinks, like, I have to blend in and be casual, so I'll eat these herbs that she's offering me. And it's like,
Yes.
you dumbass.
He does that.
I believe it.
I feel like if I handed someone a plant and they just started munching away at the leaves, that would be the opposite of casual. I'd be like, this
Yeah.
person's weird.
Right.
Yep.
Anyways, back to Wintro. One line he has is when he's talking about Vivacia, neither animal or wooden ship, but some unholy mix. And that made me like interested because I feel like when they talk about Sa is all about like duality and the merging of two things in one. So I would think that like a mix of ship and animal would actually be like closer to Sa because it embodies that duality. So
Well, it's neither animal or wooden ship what it should be. And I noted this down, but for a different reason because Winter was getting dangerously close to the truth about live ships. And I was like,
That's why I noted it too. I was like,
eyeballs,
well,
eyeballs, eyeballs.
Winter's actually pretty close to the mark. But what bugs me about him in this part is he just like, he's literally searching his mind for a reason to not like Vivacia, and he like can't find one in scripture or like Sa's teachings. And then he's like, well, I can't really find a reason, so I'll just like decide that it's unholy.
Well, he's like, she freaks me out. It makes sense.
So he like tries to find a reason, like I don't understand her, so I'm going to try to find a reason that she's unholy so I can justify the fact that
He
I don't
feels these
understand her.
prejudices. The
Yeah.
thing is, though, the like all the things that he's running through his head about in the scripture about like it's magics that deprive someone of life in order to bring life to something else, magics that deprived someone of life in order to enhance someone else's power, magic to bring that brought misery to another's life in order to enhance another's own or another's life. Like he's like none of these seem to apply to whatever wakened the live ship. All of those apply to what happened and why live ships are around. I'm like, oh my God.
I noted exactly that part too, and I was like, these unholy magics are pretty spot on for the live ships because the Rainwild traders literally killed the dragons for their cocoons.
Yes. They
Winter
took
doesn't
away
know
the
that,
dragon's
but he's like
lives.
on the money. Yeah.
Yes. He's been so in tune with this stuff this entire time. And it makes sense. Like, seeing this and all of that is like, it makes sense why Amber is so drawn to him and needs to find him. Like, of course,
he's just got a good bad vibesometer.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, he's so close to figuring everything out. All it would take is like a little nudge here and there from Amber for him to figure it out and be like, and then you know he would go full force on it because he's like, this is wrong. And he would just like, he would crash through everything.
Mm-hmm.
Very wild.
I also forgot like how just like philosophical Vivacia is from like day one.
Same.
She has the line, "Who are you, I wonder, you creatures of flesh and blood and bone, born in your own bodies and doomed to perish when that flesh fails." And I was like, huh, sounds very dragon of you. How interesting. And there's another line she has, "Yet when one of you is near, I feel you are woven of the same strand as I, that we are but extensions of a segmented life, and that together we complete one another." And it's like, huh, that sounds kind of like a magic I know. Just a little bit of wit here and there.
And that's like the relationship between dragons and humans, that they kind of balance each other out, and that one without the other takes the world into a very bad extreme.
Mm-hmm.
So it's dragons all around.
I wonder what, like, because we have live ships as, like, sort of how humans exploit dragons when they're forgotten and gone. I wonder what the alternative would look like if humans were the one to disappear and dragons were around. How would, like, the what would be that sort of thing? Like, how would they express that with humans? Because I feel like that would happen.
Well, I think that it's like it would only be elderlings, but it would be like the dragons would be fighting over the last humans and they would turn them into something horrible because they're both like two different dragons are trying to shape this one human. So then it would drive them crazy. You're muted, Leah.
You're muted.
I was gonna say like what they do with Fran, because Malta's dragon and Rain's dragon like, or no, sorry, not Fran. The wing girl,
Chimera.
Mara?
yeah, her and Hats have a kid, but their dragons like won't both like claim him, and they won't work together on how to make the changes. So then their kid just has like fucked up feet, or like Fitz has to fix their kid because yeah.
So that's definitely what would happen, I think, if there was a lack of humans in the world for the dragon.
Every human would have platypus flippers. Got it.
And there wouldn't be Fitz around to help them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. My last note for this chapter is just there's a line, because I've been talking about how like this entire series is about growth, and so there's like a line here where I was like, this just embodies everything the series is about. So Winter and Vivacia are talking, and Vivacia's like, we grow, we become, and Winter's like, we become what? We become us as we were meant to be. And I'm like, that's the entire point of the series. That's this trilogy.
Yeah.
Yes.
My last note in this chapter was just that I forgot about Torg, and he also sucks.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, wow, there's a lot. Like, I feel like in Farseer, there's a couple characters that we hate, but like not with the vehemence that we hate Kyle and Kenneth and Torg and like the Satrap. Like, there's a lot of truly despicable and like abhorrent characters in this trilogy.
There's also like the sailor they pick up later when they go on Paragon who beats Amber. What's his name? Starts with an L.
I think it starts with like an L or something. I don't remember, but I know who you're talking about. The one that like stands over her.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And we know like and then we find out in like whatchamacallit.
That Fitz like
Fitz had like skilled through the fool to protect her.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I only really remember feeling like a lot of hatred towards Galen in Farseer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Regal sucks, but I didn't like. I hate Regal, but not to the level that I hate like Kenneth and Kyle. You know?
Because we get their point of view, and it's much more personal when it comes to Kenneth and Kyle, I think.
And
With Regal,
like,
he's always so off in a distance. He's never like, he's like a bully, but he's like never close.
That's
like cartoonishly evil.
On a daily basis.
When we do get his perspective, it's like, oh, you are like a crazy person.
Yeah.
You know?
Which, okay, to be fair, Kyle and Kenneth are crazy people, but they're like...
They're calculated. Like, Regal's like unhinged.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I think the difference is like, like the how the motivations come about. Because for Regal, it's just sort of like citations, just a blank page. While with like Kenneth and Kyle, they have like such pointed, cruel reasoning for what they're doing.
Right.
I love how like before we started recording, we were like, oh, we're so excited. Like this section builds up so much for all the exciting stuff that's gonna happen, and then whenever we get into episode, we're just like, everything's gonna suck. I hate them. So much bad stuff is gonna happen.
Hate them all.
Yeah.
I feel bad every time I read a part about Selden because I'm like, oh, you poor little baby, you're just gonna grow up and live like a terrible life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read Tawny Man first, so I'm like, is this the same fucking Selden? Like, how, what's the transition here?
I read Tawny Man, but I forgot that Selden existed by the time I got around to reading Live Ships. So I didn't realize it was the same until I reread Tawny Man. And then I was like, oh, hey, Selden.
And then,
but he goes through the ringer in Rain Wilds. It's rough.
Yes, he does.
yeah.
It's awful.
Fortunately, he gets to, like, marry a queen. So, like, you know.
Is that canon? Does that happen? I don't remember.
I don't remember. Like, I don't think it's like I think it's just sort of like they end up having like a little romance, but they never like they never confirm where it goes on page.
Right.
Because I don't remember if they do in the final trilogy. I'm assuming not.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Selden's mentioned very much in the last trilogy, right?
I don't think so.
I think it's just like he's off. He's not in Kelsingra.
Okay. Can we move to chapter 8?
Yes.
Okay, so chapter 8, Night Conversations. So the previous chapter kind of just ended with Althea being drunk and depressed, and this chapter, she's drunk and depressed, but Brashen gets to hear about it. And they go back home. Kyle is really an asshole because he's awake, and he's like, "You're ruining the family name, you slut," or whatever he like calls her, like a bunch of like misogynistic names. And it kind of doesn't go anywhere, but the interesting part of it is that like lots of the chapter takes place in Brashen's point of view. And I think that getting to see his perspective on lots of these things is the fun part of this chapter.
Right at the beginning of this chapter, we get to see just how shitty Kyle is going to be and get, because like I think this is the first line in the chapter, and it's from Kefria's point of view, and she says her mother broke down as soon as they were inside the door, her knees simply folding. Kyle stood shaking his head so Kefria saw her mother to bed. Like, he's just standing there as she is just like everything goes out of her. She probably fainted. Like, she just can't handle anymore, and he's just like, what are you doing? Like, get yourself together. He's the worst.
Mm-hmm. It's worse. He feels like pity. He's like, "Oh, this weak woman. That's okay. I'll handle it."
Right.
I hate him so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get the mansplaining, which I fucking hate too.
Yeah, one of, like, I kind of already said all my notes for this chapter, but my biggest one is just Kyle is so gross.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any other words to describe him. He's just like a puke. He's like the human embodiment of puke.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But like, it's like yucky throw up. So you ate a bunch of weird food and then you drank a ton. And it's that.
It's like hangover throw up, where you like ate greasy food before you went to bed.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's not.
If you're an emetophobe, I'm very sorry for all of that.
You threw up outside and it's cooking in the summer heat too. That's Kyle. That's Kyle, you guys.
Yeah. Yep, that's Kyle. Someone turned that into a person with
thinking,
magic.
Cooking, hangover, throw up.
And it became Kyle Haven.
Yes.
I love how, like, I feel like all we know about Kaze came from Chalced. We, like, don't really get any of his, like, friends or family. He just sort of, like, emerged out of nowhere, so I could totally believe that he's just, like, sorcerously conjured.
From someone's barf.
Yes.
One thing, like, Chalced seems like a cartoon place. Like, we don't, besides the Duchess, we don't get a single, like, decent human being coming out of there.
Yeah.
Everybody's bad. I guess Burrich, but Burrich was a slave. Like,
I think it wasn't even Burrich. Was Burrich even in there? Yeah. I thought they had migrated to the Six Duchies already.
No, they escaped the Six Duchies.
They escaped to there, and his grandmother, like, got the ring, got the earring.
Burrich was never a slave then. I thought his grandmother was the one.
Oh yeah,
He was
sorry.
like the last generation.
Right. And then
Family at least.
he gets like in trouble and goes to the six duchies.
Oh, okay.
Is what happened. Because he's just like being a rascal.
I think like Chalced is like, it feels like so ridiculous, but I think getting to see some of the stuff in Rainwild sort of like, it puts into context like how the culture works. Because before then it was just like this faceless villain place where everyone is slaves, and it's just like, how is this sustainable?
And then
And
every
like,
person we ever meet from there is awful. Like Kyle and then all the brigands that you run into in Rainwilds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then it's one of those things where it's just like, it's just like a trickle down culture, where it's like, the Duke. You have this whole thing of like the Duke gets to be a shitty person, and we will just like, we'll just kidnap everyone's sons, and everyone's cutthroat and backstabby, and you can't trust anyone, and you have to do what you have to get ahead. It's just, yeah.
Right.
Which is why I really wish we got more of Chalced before it like fell, because I feel like it's such an important part of the series, but we only get like bits and pieces of how like it works.
Mm-hmm. It would have been interesting, but I don't think I could handle any more of the awfulness that comes from there.
That's fair. I always expected that we would go to Chalced because of like how much emphasis Amber puts on ending slavery and how important it is to change the world.
Right.
It feels like after this trilogy, Amber just sort of like forgets about that. And that's one part that didn't like stick super well with me.
We'll have to look, because I don't remember much.
I don't either. What? I don't remember if it like comes up that much after this.
Yeah, I think that like, I mean, I think it's probably just like the Fool changes the world in a different way and sets it on the right path, but yeah.
Well, I think everything ties into the dragons, so bringing the dragons back will help end slavery.
The dragons basically like fuck up all of.
They like burn it to the ground.
Yeah, so I think that like effectively would help end slavery.
And I feel
like Amber just talks about it and like mobilizes slaves and does so much in this trilogy, and I wish that like in Tawny Man they talked about that a little bit. That's all.
Right. I think the problem is we get it from Fitz's point of view. So Fitz is more worried about and like thinking more about how different the Fool is and how like this persona that they put on and all of that stuff. Like that's what Fitz is worrying about. So he's not like asking the Fool what they're doing, or like they could also be like sending money back to Bingtown to help and all that stuff without us knowing, because that's not something Fitz cares about, because it's not something he knows about.
Like Fitz is kind of a bad friend in that he doesn't do very much asking about how other people are doing. Like, he like privately wonders and like resents the Fool for having this other persona and other life, but he's never like, tell me about your adventures since I last saw you. He's like, welcome to my hut. Drink brandy with me and my wolf.
Yeah.
I think it's just that like Fitz is just assumes that the Fool will tell. Like Fitz trusts the Fool so much that he's like,
if it's important, I'll know about it. That's not how friendship works, Fitz.
And it's like, okay, so going back to that, how is the Fool supposed to know what you think is important? Clarify this for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Fitz is like, the Fool will know because it's important to me. Just
right.
Speaking of the Fool, Amber's back. We get Amber finally in this chapter.
They have returned.
I'm so happy.
They're so mysterious.
I know, I love it.
All we get is just Amber behind like it's almost like a shadow puppet. Just Amber there.
Yeah.
Amber smiling, Amber suddenly frowns. Scene ends.
It's just so funny reading it now and like seeing how much time she puts into like describing like the shop and Amber and all of this stuff. And like if you were going into it not knowing who Amber was, you'd be like, why is Hobb writing so much about this weird little like woman?
Mm-hmm.
What? But knowing it, you're like, oh, I'm soaking in everything. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I also noticed something when Althea's talking about Amber to Brashen in front of Amber so Amber can hear and says that she looks like she's carved of wood and all that stuff. Then then Althea says, she reminds me of my ship, lovely Vivacia, with all the colors of life over silk grain of wizard wood. And Amber's face abruptly changed to an expression of extreme distaste. She's got to know or have some inkling then about how live ships are made if that upsets her so much.
Oh, like 100%, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
But I hate that we don't, like, why doesn't she tell anybody? Or does she and I just forget?
She never tells people too much. Like, she's always dropping hints, but it's very rare that she just comes out and explains something. Like, even to Fitz, let alone to, like, these people in Bingtown that she doesn't really know yet, you know?
Where it could be dangerous if she reveals too much information.
Or says the wrong thing. Like, she's considered an outsider still, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I forgot going into this, like, in my head, Alfie and Amber were just, like, friends from the start. I forgot that they meet and that, like, kind of grows as the story goes on. So when this part happened, I was like, oh, they don't know each other. I totally forgot that.
Me too. I'm just ready for them to be friends again. I love it. The dynamic is really nice.
Yep.
And having Amber or the Fool in any iteration is just something that I need in my life. So
although she's not
we can
funny in this. Like, we don't see the Fool's humor when she's being Amber. So
she's very serious. But she does like sing and stuff. She's still very like artsy and sing-songy.
I think sometimes she's funny with Paragon.
Definitely.
And Jack. And Jack.
And Jack, yeah. Oh, I forgot about Jack too.
Yeah, so like right after that, Brashen and Althea are like talking. And they're like, I guess she doesn't like people who like work with Wizardwood. And Althea's like, there's a lot more that work Wizardwood in Bingtown that Van would like to own up to it. It's a dirty little trade, but if you want to carve a bit and have the coin, you can get it. And it's like, when I first read this, I thought this was just like exposition. But like coming back on a second read, you know that Althea knows this because of like the Wizardwood charm that Kefria got for her.
And it's very obvious because right in that section, Althea observed it darkly and then she scratched at her belly. Like, she could not have been more fucking obvious that she's got like a belly button ring that keeps babies away.
Yeah, and Edda has
do
that.
Do we know about those charms? Yeah, because we like hear about it.
She takes
like,
it off.
Edda having one either like in the previous in like Divvytown chapter or after this. I don't remember.
I think it's after this. I don't think that it's before.
I think Kenneth says that she has a belly button piercing in the Divvytown chapter, but we don't know maybe what its purpose is.
Yeah.
Till later? Yeah. I don't remember.
Yeah, we definitely don't know what its purpose is. I just don't remember if they mentioned it yet.
Right.
And yeah, also like that section got me thinking that like I know that Kyle is like misogynistic anyways, and he would probably call like Althea like a slattern or a slut all the time, even without this. But I think the reason that like that's like the focal point of like his insults for her is probably because Kefria told him her version of what went down.
Yeah, I believe that.
I believe that too. Because Kefria's like, I can't keep secrets from my husband. She's awful.
Yeah, she does suck. Pretty bad.
Yeah, my last note for this chapter was just um, you were talking last episode about loving like the metaphors and how like the serpents think of stuff, and so like I love the way that Malkin was like, or like I think it was Sasuria talking about how Malkin experienced memories, where it's like they're like they're like a great school of Capelin, like fish in front of him, and like a wise fisher, he has to like jump into them and like hope he and like know that he'll end up with some fish on the other side.
Yeah. I just love the writing in those portions. It's so rich with like metaphor and the way that they think about stuff and how it's different than like the human people think about
She
stuff.
writes animals very, very well.
Yes.
This makes me want like Robin Hobb's version of like the Warrior Cats books. Like,
Yes. Oh my God, I would love that. I would die for that. You know, it'd
That's
be a
so-
pack of wolves.
Yeah.
mhm.
That's so funny you brought that up because I had never heard of those, and just last weekend my friend told me about them and how she was like obsessed with them and always rented them from the school library.
I loved them. I read so much. There were like a million books in that series, and
Oh yeah,
they're very good. I love
they're
them.
actually they still hold up. It's kind of
Yeah.
wild.
I think I listened to them on audio, like a couple of them on audiobook, like 3 years ago, and I binged them too until the library didn't have any more, and I'm like, I'm not reading anymore.
Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, they're good.
Yeah, so we'll just add that to the short list of like series that we might pick up after we're done with the Realm of the
Yeah.
Elderlings. Yeah,
Warrior-
just to fill that void.
Our next
Yes.
podcast series will be about warrior cats.
Yes.
So similar scale. It's got like 5 different series with like 5 books. So you know,
We could do it.
yeah, totally. Um, but I guess first we should focus on finishing this. Yeah, totally. Um,
I don't have anything else for chapter 8.
Me neither.
so chapter 9 is the last chapter of this section. And the two main like there's like 3 main vignettes here. Brashen goes to hang out with Paragon. Uh, Kenneth is once again trying to convince Sorkor of his ambitions. And finally, the Vestrits are arguing about Wintrow's future. And as we alluded to earlier, Wintrow gets decked.
Windrow.
By his own dad.
hmm
Ugh. And Wintrow is like a kid. Wintrow's only, what, 13?
Yeah.
hmm
And Kyle literally just knocks him out cold, like a grown-ass man punching a 13-year-old kid in the face. And they all talk about how Wintrow's like small for his age. And just knocks him out cold. And Ronica and Kefri are standing right there and they're like, yeah, this seems like a good person for us to put the custody of this child into.
All the fucking worst.
Like, what the oh.
Them all.
Yeah,
they don't have enough initiative to like turn back now.
Right. I feel like Hobb is punching all of us in the face with how awful Kyle is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're, what, 120 pages into this book, or 100 pages into this book, and we're all like, oh, fuck Kyle, man. Oh, no, 200 pages.
Damn, it doesn't even feel that long. That's crazy.
No.
It does
No.
not.
It still feels very much like we're in the intro.
We're at the beginning still, technically. Like, it feels very much beginning-ish.
Right.
Yeah, I think like next chapter is from Veronica's perspective. And I remember that as being like the 3rd chapter of the book. I didn't remember it being like this far along.
I think once everyone gets on the ships and all that shit, that's when it starts like the book actually is beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, despite how horrible the scene where Wintrow gets knocked out is, I love this like description where it's like losing consciousness felt like he was sinking down to the floor, becoming one with it as he had with the ship. say that the floor thought only of black darkness. So did
Yes.
Winslow. And it's
Yeah.
that's banger writing, right? Like, how do you
It
even
seems
think
like
of that?
something that Fitz would think or say.
Yeah, I agree.
Partially because Fitz gets knocked out a lot.
Yeah,
Poor Fitz. They both have a.
Like, I've had practice trying to like mix this shit up and keep it fresh. You know, I can't just say he fainted.
I already
Yeah.
wrote 3 books of someone like repeatedly getting beat up. How do I write this in a different way?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that like this chapter is like lots of me just appreciating like little things that Hobb does that I feel like a worse writer wouldn't if you gave them the same outline. Um,
Oh yeah.
and I think that like one of those is like just the whole like Brashen Paragon friendship. I feel like it's one of those things which like you could argue it's necessary to the plot because then Brashen goes to get Paragon later in the book, but like to me it feels like the sort of like scenes and relationship where a lesser author wouldn't include it because it's like it doesn't need to exist. Like I only care about the relationships which are like more long term. But it adds to both of their characters as like people who are down on their luck but just sort of like commiserate with each other. I love it.
I think it's so cute. I love that they become friends. I love that they kind of already are friends. And then I just love Paragon in general. I also love that Hobb, like, it's at this point, reading it back, it's not even subtle, but like it is subtle at the beginning, like when you don't know anything going on. But that Hobb starts this chapter about Paragon and then immediately flows into a section about Kenneth and then talks about Paragon in that section. And you're just like, I know all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
And I love how like, because okay, there's like a part where like Kenneth is like, "Why a live ship?" Or like, or sorry, Sorkor's like, "Why a live ship? I don't get it." And Kenneth's like, "I want one. That's why." And I love how this is another like thing where like I said like this entire chapter is just me appreciating Hobbs' writing, and like sometimes like Kenneth will just say something and we just won't get his inner monologue. Like Hobb will just be like, "No, we're not going to expand on what Kenneth's thinking here," and then later like she'll like bring it back, and I love how she just like subtly is just like, "Yeah, you know, like you don't need to know what Kenneth's thinking here." Like,
but we do know that the reason Kenneth wants a live ship is because he wants it again. Like he's had one already.
oh yeah,
and he
but she obviously can't like say that because she's like
Yeah.
holding on to the spoiler. So,
but we do reading back, you know exactly why he wants one, so you don't even need to know why. Like he doesn't have to tell anybody.
I feel like there are like context clues or little clues here and there because no one else seems to understand live ships the way that people like, and not just anybody in Bingtown, but like specifically people that are old traders or have a live ship. And we see that in Kyle. Like Kyle has no idea about anything because he's an outsider.
So yeah.
But Kyle knows, or I'm sorry, Kenneth knows things and is like talking to Sorkor, and it shows that he knows things. So it's like a little clue that he's not just from Bingtown, but like possibly from a trader family.
mm-hmm.
And he even knows specific stuff about Paragon, because maybe you guys said this while I was in the bathroom, but when Sorkor calls him the pariah, and he's like the Paragon, his name was the Paragon, though even his own family have taken to calling him the pariah. It's like, how would Kenneth know that?
I know.
He isn't a Ludluck, you know?
So good.
I
Yeah,
love
it's just like
starts like spilling
and
his thoughts and stuff out, even though like he's trying to be sneaky about it, but we all can see what he's doing now.
Well, like I can see it now, but on my first read, I had no fucking idea.
Yeah,
and it comes back to like she just like even though it's from his point of view, sometimes she just has him say stuff and doesn't expand on his thought process, and other times it's.
Yep.
I don't know how she does that without making it feel like making that cutout feel unnatural because she really expands on his thoughts elsewhere. But somehow she just like I think she just like keeps the conversation flowing so it doesn't feel like there's a pause there. It just feels like, oh, there's nothing. He just said it. There's nothing important for him. There's no thought process behind it. Just disregard.
Well, I feel part of it too is that Kenneth is intentionally not thinking about that stuff because he's suppressed so deeply the fact that he even had Paragon at one point that maybe he really is like not thinking about it in that moment. He's just like, I want a live ship, and he intentionally like keeps that part of him blocked off.
He doesn't want to think about it.
Yeah, that knows that he used to have one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if Hobb went into like Kenneth's thoughts every time he was talking and every little thing he said, it would become too much. And so having little bits of just a quick little sentence here and there with no thought or explanation is actually good, like writing, and it keeps the story flowing still.
Mm. But yeah, it's just such a good like case study on how to like write from a character's point of view, but still like keep secret from the reader.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, she does a really good job of that. We see that when Fitz poisons all those guards, too. Because we don't know what he does until he's like, I could have poisoned just one of them instead of all 6 of them. Or whatever. And then you're like, oh my god, he poisoned them? We've been with him this whole time. When did he do that?
Yeah, she sort of just like pushes through and is like she just like writes like things are normal. She's like Fitz is doing this, then he did this, and it's like, okay, I guess so.
Exactly. Yeah, she's a master at that. She's a master at a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah, that was basically just my notes for this chapter. Didn't really have much else to say.
Yeah, I think the only thing I have to say is just that Paragon's loneliness makes me really sad. Like, the fact that Brashen showed him how to, like, weave one time, and he's like, the amount of hours he spent holding on to that memory or, like, practice weaving with his hands. It's just, like, really cute and really sad. It's heartbreaking that he's just, like, alone all the time when he pushes people away, but he doesn't want to be alone.
Yeah, and there's a stigma around him, and he just like, yeah, he's so hurt, and it's like he wants to feel safe, but like he feels like he has to do all these things to keep himself safe.
Right. Or like when there's a part that also made me sad when he can hear somebody coming and he doesn't know who it is yet, and he's trying to stay still and keep his arms crossed over his chest, but he's like, it's really hard not to reach up and try to protect your face when...
Well, like, because he thought it was like kids throwing rocks.
Yeah, because people just like, well, first someone hacked his eyes off. Kenneth does that, right? Because Igor makes them or something?
Yeah, Egrot.
Egrot. I was going to call him Igor.
You can have Igor. I'll keep the Benadryl.
Benadryl.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like this poor ship baby.
And he literally is a baby, despite being like crazy old because of all the Kenneth memories.
He's like, and there's a part, I think it's in like a later book, but I think it's apart from Brashen's perspective, and he says like sometimes Paragon would be like an inconsolable child, and then other times he'd be like an angry man. And once you know that he has so much of Kenneth in him, you know that is like a little boy inside him that is coming out, you know? I wonder if Kenneth would have been different if Paragon had like given him his memories back and he hadn't died. Or if he still would have been just awful.
I think he still would have.
I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. I feel like Fitz got his memories back and didn't change all that much. So
Yeah, I feel like Kenneth would still be
the
awful.
same.
Right.
Because like
He might even be worse.
getting your memories back can't change what you've done and how and the person you've become.
Right. He might even be worse, honestly.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I have for this chapter.
I only have one other thing, and it's even pirates think the Six Duchies folk are barbarians. Because Thorcor was like, but where would I go? North, where it's all ice and snow and barbarians? And I'm like, they're not barbarians.
To be fair, if someone was like, do you want to live in Bingtown or the Six Duchies? I would choose Bingtown.
Well, okay, I think it depends. I mean, what's its name? Tradeford sounds pretty damn nice.
Yeah,
that's true. I would live in Tradeford. I changed my mind.
But if they ask me, would you like to live in the mountains or Bingtown? Definitely Bingtown.
Or even Buck. Buck sounds like it kind of sucks.
Yeah,
like
the mountains are definitely better than Buck.
It's like
I guess I
always
wouldn't mind
cold and
taking a
when it's not.
vacation. I'd like
Yeah,
taking a vacation to Buck to like see how it is, but I wouldn't want to live there, I guess.
in the summer. But even
Yeah.
in the summer, it's like, yeah, it's not cold and terrible weather-wise, but you might get like
Killed
by
by
a
a
one.
ship. Yeah. Right now, they're not doing so hot. I would choose Bingtown. Later, I might think otherwise.
Wait, isn't this is like post-war era, right? Though.
Oh, that's true. Well, it's like halfway, I think.
The Six
Yeah,
Duchies, I think, has finished, like, they've finished their war. And then we're in the interim between, like, right now, Bingtown's not at war, but they start a war with Calcid in this trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just, like, fading into a different war at a different part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's always war with Calcid. Chalice, or whatever you call it.
Yeah, until it blows up. But until then.
Yep.
We gotta wait.
Man, I wonder how Chalsa just like survives or like has like an economy to be able to like support like constant war. I assume the answer is just like slaves, but yeah. Still, it just boggles the mind.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But yeah, I think with that. Yeah,
That's it.
I think with that. Yeah, a little bit abrupt, but we kind of front loaded this episode with all the stuff we wanted to talk about, so
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. And we'll see you next week for chapters is it 9?
It's 10 through
10, okay.
14.
Yeah.
Cool. Where I think we just get out of the intro of this book and get into some of the real action happening. But yeah, until then, bye.
Bye.
Bye.